Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 68. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has subscribed to the show, who has shared it, rated, reviewed. Please consider giving us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform, because your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. Also want to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment has been providing uncompromising quality for over 40 years. Samson products are long-lasting and made of the highest quality equipment on the market. Each project is built from the ground up with the ability to customize every need. The team at Samson focuses on developing the highest quality relationships with their customers, in addition to providing them unparalleled quality in every piece of equipment bearing the Samson name. Learn more about Samson's professional weight room solutions and the Samson standard at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out cerberusstrength.com and use promo code strength_game to receive an extra 10% off your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Coach Monte Sparkman. Monte is the head athletic performance coach at Azle High School in Azle, Texas. Prior to arriving at Azle, he served in multiple roles for over a decade at Richland High School as an athlete performance coach, special education teacher, assistant football coach, and head track and field coach. Sparkman also served as a physical education instructor and head powerlifting coach at Virginia Military Institute from 2007 to 2010, a volunteer assistant powerlifting coach and physical education teacher at Burkburnett High School in Texas for 1 year, after starting his professional career as an assistant director of rec sports and wellness at Midwestern State University. Additionally, he was an intern performance coach for football at North Texas under Frank Wintrich. Sparkman has been giving back to the profession since his inception, speaking at numerous coaching clinics, and his articles have been featured on both EliteFTS and Simplifaster. Sparkman is also no stranger to training himself. He has an extensive experience in coaching and athletics. A former 3-year letter winner at football at Baker University, he has been competing in powerlifting since 2003. He has competed in multiple weight classes, multiple different divisions, and boasts personal records of competition best 1,000-pound squat, a 635-pound bench in a full meet, and a 661-pound bench only meet, 490 raw, and an undisclosed deadlift. With that said, I'm excited to have him on the show. So let's get into the game with Coach Monte Sparkman. What's going on, everybody? Today, I'm excited. We've got Coach Monte Sparkman on the show. This has been a while in the making. I know you had a big morning today. I know you got a ton of high school and middle school kids going on. So I appreciate you coming on today, man.
Oh, thanks so much. We definitely been playing, tag and phone tag and been wanting to set this up. So I'm fired up, man. I really appreciate you having me on.
No, of course. Like I said, you're busier, way busier than me over the summer. So I completely understand. And I know you got a lot of stuff going on between some of the clinics and other speaking engagement and stuff you have. So I'm stoked to finally get you on and pick your brain a little bit more today. So, hey, I want to hop right into it. Really want to get to the meat and potatoes of how you got started in the strength game, like what sports you played growing up, and how you got to be involved competing in powerlifting.
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's information out there about that. So I really don't want to, we could probably do a whole show on my background, just because really that, my roots or my upbringing rather is really what I owe a lot of where I am today too, but long story short, I grew up playing high school football in Texas, like a lot of us. And I wasn't, the biggest, the strongest or the fastest, but I did find an affinity to the weight room during that time. I had our head coach was Coach Charles Hicks. He was a former NFL running back, and he was larger than life. And we would go in the weight room and see him, and he'd be, benching 405 for reps. I mean, dude, just false grip, like no spot, taking it out, just killing it. And I mean, I wanted to be like him. And like most bigger guys, I didn't want to run, I didn't want to do any of that. And so the weight room became kind of where I found my identity. And so I did that and had a little bit of success in high school. I was fortunate to go play NAIA football, and got to do that. But really I'll tell people I wasn't an athlete. I'm not an athlete. Like luckily I don't have to, do athletic things for my teams to be successful, because it would be really bad and ugly, but the success that I was able to have, the limited success that I had, was due to having an above average level of strength. And I worked my tail off, for that. I can remember going to the weight room during the summertime, and my grandparents would be on vacation. They'd go back east for 3 weeks, and I stayed behind, because I wanted to lift. And that's really where it started. My senior year, Brad Owen, he's now the superintendent of our district in my hometown in Burkburnett. He was my first powerlifting coach, and we got powerlifting my senior year. And that's where I first got introduced into powerlifting, was in. And at an early age, I know I told you we're not talking about the deadlift, because the deadlift is awful and it's evil and it's not good. But it started then. I couldn't deadlift then, and I still can't. So anyway, Coach Owen brought powerlifting my senior year and did that, and I think qualified for regionals by the skin of my teeth, and but then after that, went on to college, and so was on the team. I'm gonna say I played, but I was on the team at Baker University in Kansas, and did that for my time there for 4.5 years. And when I came back to my hometown, that was kind of my whole deal, was I was going to come back home, be a D-line, be a head powerlifting coach in my hometown. And that's what I was going to do, and I was fortunate to get hooked up during a lifeguarding job with a guy named Mike Askew. And Mike was a former Army guy. He was a lot older than me. I say a lot, 7-8 years. And had dabbled in bodybuilding and powerlifting in the military, and was back and actually opened a gym in our hometown. And so I'm 22, just about to turn 23. And actually I missed my senior college football banquet to do my first powerlifting meet. So did that. And then from there, really it's, I've been in it. So did my first meet in 2003. And have been off and on, since then. So almost, 19 years, going on close to 20 years of training at what I would call, a pretty high level, so that's kind of my background. Excuse me. But yeah. And so that, that's where it started. And so 2003, we did that meet, and, Mike competed, and man, we had a crew. In that one gym, Mike ended up being a 1,025 squatter. He benched 7, pulled 7. We had a couple other guys who were squatting mid-8s. I at that gym, I think my best squat was an 865. I benched, I think I was benching a little over 600. We had another guy benching over 600. We had, multiple 500-pound guys, and this is all equipped, this isn't raw, this was in the early 2000s when it was all about the gear, but I was still single ply. Like I was still single ply up until my last year, 2000, trying to think what I wore in 2006. I competed in Vegas at the APF seniors. That was like the first big meet, the big meet I did. It was actually the same meet. If you've seen Bigger, Stronger, Faster with Bell. So that was the meet he benched 700 in.
Okay.
So I was trying to bench 700 that meet. And I'd I'd lost like, I don't know, 20 some pounds. Did my first cut. I was 320 something, trying to cut to 308 and cut too much, and really didn't know what that was about. And only it took me 3 attempts to get my opener 650. But that was in I think a double ply at that time. And I think I had briefs, and I want to say, no, I had a double ply suit. So, but that was like one of the second meets I had done. I got my first elite at that meet. And so, yeah, it was pretty cool. It was the first meet that my wife, she was my fiance at the time. So she was there. Long story short, we're flying to Vegas. I had a great squat. I squatted like 876, I think. And I took 903 down. And of course, after the 876, all the guys, and they I'm sure it was all mind games. That like, man, you're killing it, dude. Like, you're sinking it really, really deep. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to cut it. So, first 900-pound squat, I'm going to cut it. And I cut it and smoked it. And they're like, dude, you missed it by this much, And I'm like, get out of here. So anyway, I missed a 903. And then it took 3 attempts. Open up 650 or whatever. Missed it. I'm like, man, I just brought this girl all the way out to Vegas. She's going to watch me bomb in my I've still never bombed in a meet, but she's like, I'm going to, be there for my first bomb. But luckily jacked the shirt enough to come back and eke out that bench and got my first elite total. I think I placed 5th, which, APF seniors at that time. I mean, that was first time I met Louie, Becca, Chuck. I mean, all, Kennelly, all those guys were there, man. It was like a who's who, that was really, really cool. But yeah, that's what we did. And so I've always kind of, powerlifting wise, I'm a gear lifter. Like, I like the gear. Like, I will stay in the gear. And I think a lot of that has to do with the longevity that I've had. Not that I've been competing consistently for almost 20 years, but I've been lifting heavy for 20 years, or relatively heavy for me, and I think that has allowed me to do that because I've been in and out of the gear, So anyways, that's just kind of a snapshot of at least on that side of it, kind of my powerlifting career, I guess.
No, that's awesome to kind of hear and see, like, basically finding a mentor and like a larger than life kind of character that you saw like when you were in high school, and that kind of where you wanted to pursue an athletic like adventure outside of football. And I mean, that's probably taken you a little bit towards your coaching career as well. Like, when did you know that you wanted to do that? Like, obviously you said like after football in college, you thought you were going to be a D-line coach, like you wanted to work in the football side of it. But like, when did you really know that, hey, this powerlifting thing too, as much as I can compete in it, I can also be on the other side of the bar and teach some people, and I have an affinity for this, and I really want to kind of pursue this as well?
So that's a great question, and I think the first exposure I got to really, you're talking about being a strength coach, right?
Yeah.
So my first exposure to that was probably in 2003. And I was working at Midwestern State Division II in Wichita Falls. I was in charge of their fitness and wellness center. And they had a strength coach, James Childers. We called him Chili. And that was really the first exposure that I got to that side of it. Because in college, in AIU, we didn't have a strength coach. 1 year was our D-line coach. 1 year was our D coordinator. I think those were the only 2 guys that kind of, 1 year, I think my first year, it was like the dude who had just graduated from playing center. Like, he was like GA strength coach, whatever, so, like, I didn't expose to that. I do remember, like, and this is crazy. I do remember in 2000 taking a Jan term class, going to KU and learning about bands and chains. But I didn't know it. I didn't know. I was just like, it's bands and chains. And then I remember learning, we had Javork. So like the Javork complex, he was at Johnson County. He came down and spoke to our class, but I didn't know who these people were, So I had exposure early on, but I didn't know, I didn't have a clue. And so in 2003, I met Chili, and, we would chop it up, and talk a little bit and this and that. But even then, I really didn't know that that's what I wanted to do. Like I was working on my teaching cert. I was getting my master's degree, but it was an education. It wasn't an exercise science or physiology or any of these other ologies that are out there now, for our profession. I'm going to be a teacher, so I got to get certified, and why not get a master's degree while I'm getting certified? So going through that, my mind was just, hey, I'm going to become a PE teacher, because who wants to teach English or math, right? Like I'm going to stay PE. And that was the game plan. Also during that time, the forums were really, really big. This is 2003, 2004. T-Nation's huge. Deep Squatter, like Jason Burnell, Deep Squatter, if you remember those. And everybody was bashing the NSCA. So like I had no desire to get CSCS. I had no desire to do any of that. I'm like, if you're not lifting bands, boards, and chains, like you don't know what you're talking about. Like those dudes are a bunch of dorks and ties and pocket protectors, and I don't want any part of it. Like I'm hardcore West Side. That was my Bible. Dave Tate wrote the periodization Bible. He wrote the 8 keys. I grew up printing those out. I've still got binders, this thick, full of T-Nation articles. And, but it was more the lifting side. It wasn't the performance side, and it really wasn't geared towards any kind of athletic development. It was how to get a bigger squat, how to get a bigger bench, how to get bigger deadlifts. And so, again, I was just saying I was exposed to it, but I didn't really know. And it wasn't until we moved, my wife was military, and we moved to Virginia, and I got an opportunity to teach and coach at Virginia Military Institute. Well, everybody I worked with were former strength coaches, like Division I former strength coaches, either at JMU, Virginia Tech, Radford. And so like I'm surrounded by some really, really fantastic people and tremendous mentors. That's when I figured it out. Guys like Jimmy Cole, our department head, Jim Witten, Jay Johnson. Some tremendous big time strength coaches. Probably nobody really knows about, because I guarantee you none of them got social media. None of them got, they're not on Instagram or Twitter, but some phenomenal coaches that I got to learn from, and who helped me and mold me become, or at least get me on the right path to becoming a strength coach. We would have arguments all the time. Who would you rather have, a 400-pound bencher or a 400-pound cleaner? Well, I'm taking a bencher. I'm stupid. I don't know any better. Now I'd probably take the cleaner, but like we would have arguments like that. Phil Sabatini was a football strength coach. Phil is a tremendous Olympic lifter. And so like, that's really when I decided, okay, I want to be a strength coach. This is what I want to do. Now, my last year there, I was 30 years old. How do I become a strength coach at 30 years old? Because what's the traditional path, right? Where you go, you intern, you GA, you do that for 10 years. So from 21 to 31, you do that. And then finally you get your first assistant job, and you're making, $26,000 if you're lucky, and do that. But here I was 30, married I'd had my first daughter, coming back to Texas. How do I do that? So fast forward a little bit, got certified. I took the CSCS because I know that's what you got to have. Did that 2011, I believe. Came back to Texas 2010, took that 2011, and then interned in 2012, 2013 with Frank Wintrich at North Texas. And I had sent out some cold emails, never heard anything back. And then Frank put that out, and he was like, hey, let's meet at barbecue joint. Well, first I knew I had probably a chance if he wants to meet at a barbecue joint. And we hit it off, and man, that was, I owe a lot. We were talking about earlier, I owe a lot to Frank, and Frank will tell you he's learned a lot from me, but I owe a lot of who I am to Frank. And so did that. But let me back up a little bit. In 2010, so I came back June 2010. My buddy's dad was like, hey, Baylor's having a strength clinic. Let's go. He's like, you just came back. Maybe you can meet some people, be a good thing to go to. So I went there. Well, he was Jeremy Weeks' high school coach. Jeremy was on staff at Baylor. And Jeremy, ended up, he was at Baylor. He was at the high school level down here in Texas for many, many years. Tremendous coach, tremendous mind. And now he's on the East Coast. But so that's where I met Jeremy. That's where I met Coach Kaz and their staff. And had I not been at that clinic, I don't know that I am where I am today. Because 2 years later, I'm speaking at that clinic. I'm speaking at that clinic. And maybe it's 3 years, but I'm speaking at that clinic. And I'm going, holy crap. I just came down here I'm an intern, or I'm nobody at that point. I'm nobody. We ended up coming back down. Frank and I, we went a couple of visits and intern down there, or as an intern, I went down there. But yeah, dude, 2 years later, I'm speaking at the clinic. And so had that not happened, had I not met those tremendous strength coaches, and had those coaches not welcomed a slap nobody like me into their fold, I don't know, and so to tie it back to powerlifting a little bit, had I not lifted the things that I lifted, had I not had the strength, quote unquote, behind me, does that opportunity happen? Because to me, that's what strength does. That's what athletic ability does. And we're talking, strength here. It gives you a little bit of, for lack of a better term, weight behind who you are. Because at that point, I'm nobody, dude. Like I'm literally just, I'm nobody. But because I'd moved some weight, well, now that gives me a little bit of credibility with these guys and a little bit of respect with these guys. And had that not happened, and had I not gone back in 2011, actually I'm going to Baylor Saturday. Different staff, obviously, but there's a guy down there who I still keep up with, Chris Roof, phenomenal strength coach, called him mad scientist, just brilliant. Wouldn't know he was a strength coach from me. Think he's probably an accountant or something. I don't know, but the dude is phenomenal. 10 years ago, we met. Our girls have played together. That doesn't happen. And so, I'm kind of rambling here a little bit. You said if I ramble, that's okay. But had I not been there in 2010, and had I not just come off of my best total ever, does that even happen? I don't know. And so that, again, gets this thing rolling. And so 2013, from 2010 to 2013, I'm at the middle school level. So I go from teaching Division One. I was the head powerlifting coach at VMI, resurrected that program, had a little bit of success, had a couple of national champions, junior national champion, took double-digit lifters to collegiate nationals, every year. And that I was there. And really, really, that was fun. Gosh, that was fun because they took care of us. It was, budget, what do you need? Me and 5 cadets drove 24 hours from Lexington to Denver. And that was the first national champion I had. Yeah, we drove because I don't like to fly. I don't do it. And so I was like, hey, there's 5 of us. We can drive 24 hours. We'll split it up. It'll be good. But to do that, to go to Orlando, to go to Louisiana, to send a lifter to Czech Republic, to be willing to send a lifter to South Africa, that was really, really cool. That was really, really cool. But coming from that, my own office, doing that, to now I'm a junior high coach. And if you know anything about junior high coaches, they are very special. And this is not derogatory in any way. I love junior high coaches. I think everybody needs to coach junior high. But get in and get out. Move on. And so I did. So I was junior. I coached 2.5 years. Did that. 2014, I think, was when I went up to the high school, and I actually turned it down. I was offered a position. I took it. Lasted like 3 days. I was like, this is not for me. And I went back to my junior high principal, said, hey, I did this, but I really want to come back. And he's like, yeah. He's like, we'd love to have you back. And so I said, okay. And at that point, Nick, I had resigned myself to the fact that, you know what, God, you want me here. I can still train. I can see my kids grow up. I can do all this. And I'm okay with it because this is the path you've laid for me, right? So I was completely at peace with it. Well, 3 weeks later, I get a call from the same head coach. Hey, what about this position? And I'm like, wait a minute. Less hours, same money. All right, I'm in. So I went from a varsity position to a freshman position, which obviously, freshman coaches don't work as many hours as the varsity guys do. And so I did that. And then at that point, he'd already had a strength coach that he had brought with him, who's one of my best friends to this day, Jake Johnson, another outstanding human coach, just phenomenal dude. So Jake was there. And so he obviously ran, the older guys, and he was gracious enough to let me work with a freshman. I was freshman coach. It made sense, right? So I started working with them. At that time, our baseball coach there, Chuck Wells, was like, he knew my background. I knew I kind of had a little bit of knowledge, and he was like, hey, I want you to start working with the baseball team. Started working with the baseball team. 2 years later, not that I had anything to do with this, but we had a first-round draft pick, so that was kind of cool. They were in the playoffs, doing really, really good stuff, and at that point, I think at that 2-year mark, Jake goes and takes a head coaching job. So I'm like, okay, well, this is my shot. It makes sense that because our head coach wasn't dumb. He knew Jake was wanting to leave and go be a head coach, and I would fill in, jump into that role. I'd be a great deal. And, but, it was like a week passed, 2 weeks passed, I was kind of running it, but we hadn't had that conversation. And finally I went into his office. I was like, look, I said, am I getting this thing or not? And of course, he's like, well, I was waiting for you to come ask, and so I look here, man, like, this is who I am and what I do. Like, if I haven't proved that to you by now, then then it's not going to happen, And so I did that, took that over. I think it was 2014, took that over and did that until last year. I was a football and track coach. I taught special ed. And did that. And last year, I was very fortunate to come to Azle, where I'm a full-time strength coach. I don't teach. I've got a brand new weight room. I've got the resources I need. I've got the support from our administration. I've got a tremendous AD who believes in what we're doing. And so here I am. So I've rambled for about 20 minutes about my background, and everyone's going to go like, this is so, why did you do that? But but I think it's important that you understand, where I come from, because I come from unathleticism. I come from a family of non-educators. Some people know this, some people don't. My dad died when I was 4. My mom was in and out of jail, was in and out of halfway houses. I was raised by my grandparents, so coming from that to where I am today, I owe it to, the title of this podcast is Strength Game. I owe it to the strength game. If I don't have a barbell, if I don't develop the passion and love for strength and for weights, I don't know that I'm here. So that background stuff to me is important. For you to understand who I am, why I am the way that I am, why I believe what I believe, and why I do the things that I do, because it truly is like the genesis of who I am. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. No,
like, because without that, I'm not, I'm just not.
No, that's awesome. No, I appreciate you going on. Like, I obviously, like, yeah, we can go into people's background and kind of riddle off like all the places they've been and their roles and stuff. And that's saved for like a website and like looking at people like the staff directory, like, but actually hearing like your emotion and the feelings and like your thought process and the different stages and the people you met and the feelings that you felt when you were in these places. Like those are the best things to me, like hearing how people got brought up and what really like drives their decision, what drives their thought process, and really what motivates them to be passionate about this like profession. And I think you said it best. It's hard to follow that up, like, because like you hit exactly kind of what the whole format of the show is, because I think everybody has a different path to how they got involved in athletics and like got to the barbell and how they got to coaching, and everyone's is unique. And that's what makes it, like, to me, like so special about the show, and to hear more people talk about it. But like I think you hit it on the head, like talking about exposure and just being willing to go and train, be willing to go and compete, be willing to go to the conference at Baylor and go meet people and things like that. And yeah, it's probably different nowadays, like you said, with kinesiology and exercise science, and like NSCA is going to now have like a strength conditioning like program, like actually derived of that. But what I hope doesn't happen is we do the exact opposite, like you said, where they get to being like tie wearing like nerds that keep pushing stuff around, and we lose the fact that one of the best people in the world was like Louis, and Louis doesn't have much of an education that's formal. And there's a lot of people in the profession that don't necessarily have a formal education, but their experience, their exposure, they're willing to put themselves under the bar, like experiment, network, reach out to people. You can't discredit those sort of things. And yes, we have to have certifications and all that stuff that kind of tie the bow on it. But if you lose sight of that, and you lose sight of actually putting yourself in those circumstances, putting yourself in that situation, like you lose the whole point of it. And I think it's even cooler that you talk about like people being in the middle school and high school setting, because I think coach and teacher are synonymous with each other. And not necessarily every coach is a good teacher, but I'd be hard pressed to find a teacher that couldn't be a good coach, because they're already mentoring people in that type of way. Like if you look back and see coaches who just blow whistles and tell kids what to do, it's more of a dictator than really is an educator. And I want coaches that are educators, and I think people are drawn to coaches that are educators more. And that's why it's cool to hear like all the different settings you've been. Like your career has been a wild ride. You did special education teacher, powerlifting coach, middle school, high school, rec sports, football coach, track coach. Like it's so well-rounded that it's made you exactly perfect for your job and perfect for the type of kids that come in, which is, it's just awesome that, and you can't replicate that for anyone else. That's your experience.
That's really cool. Like I've never thought of my path like that, but you're right. I mean, I have, and I guess I'll tell people that I've coached at just about every level. I mean, obviously not the pros or anything, but I mean, I've been at the middle school. Like I've written programs for kids that can't walk and chew gum at the same time. You know, I've coached high level power lifters. You know, I'm now at the high school. You know, I've done the Division I internship thing. You know, I've been offered, you know, that type of opportunity, and I've done also the intramural, you know, the rec side of it. So you're right. I mean, what well-rounded fits, because I am round. You know, I mean that fits. You know, but I've never thought of it like that, Nick. I mean, I honestly, truly haven't, and it makes a lot of sense. And I don't know if it makes me perfect for the job, but it does give me a wide breadth of experiences to draw from. You know, I can remember idolizing the Division I strength coach. The whistleblowing, ball headed, you know, goatee, tough guy. Like we're going to, you know, wake up and eat nails and just, I go to bed, you know, I get up at 3 a.m. and I'm in it. And like, you know, like that used to be the coolest thing. And I could probably, you know, tell you, you know, strength coaches from 10, 15 years ago who, who I would look up to. And, now it's not that person anymore. It's not that person anymore. And I tweet way too much, and I'm on my phone too much, but for me, now the people that I look up to are the ones who are in the trenches with me, alongside of me, and not necessarily at my job, but alongside in our profession, the high school coaches, because they're the ones having to operate under the same pretenses that I am. They're the ones having to operate under the same constraints that I am. They're the ones doing some really, really cool stuff. And, we talked about Texas, and I'll say, I feel like Texas is the best. I feel like we are the trendsetter. We are the driving force in high school strength conditioning. I'll put it out there, and it's going to ruffle some feathers, and I don't care, but that's who I look up to now. It's not the SEC. It's not the Big 12. It's not the Pac-12. Because you know what? I know the coaches we have at our level can coach circles around a lot of those guys and girls. The coaches we have at our level are some of the best coaches in the country. That's who I look up to now. That's who I want to be around now. It doesn't mean I can't go. Like I said, I'm going to Baylor Saturday. It doesn't mean I can't go down and learn from those guys and girls. It doesn't mean I can't. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, like, don't be enamored with that. It's two completely different arenas, So that's really what I'm saying is I want to be around people who are swimming in the same pool. It's summertime. We'll use swim analogy, swimming in the same pool I am, because we're dealing with the same athlete. I can't go recruit 6'5", 220 and can run a 4.3. I've got 5'5", 190 and runs a 6'3". You know what I mean? So I got to work with that athlete. So anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but I just think, when you're trying to find teachers, when you're trying to find mentors, when you're trying to find people to latch onto, man, you got to look around you, because there's some amazing people doing some really, really impressive things at our level. And those are my kind of people. And they happen to be teachers and coaches. And like you said, they are the best, because the weight room, what we do is a classroom. My weight room is a classroom. You walk into my classroom, we've got technology, we've got differentiated learning, we've got scaffolding, we've got all those fancy words that they want to spout off in teachers' meetings and teacher professional development. You know what? Come to the weight room. Come to the weight room and you'll see it. You'll see 4 different versions of a squat. You'll see 3 different versions of a pull. You'll see 4 different derivatives of, I don't know what you want to call it now, but like vertical force production. It might be an Olympic lift. It might not be. It might be a vertical jump. It might be a trap bar jump. It might be, a dumbbell jump, or whatever it is, but that's my classroom. That's my classroom. And so, teaching's a big part of it. Teaching is a big part of it. So anyways.
No, that's awesome. Like, I think you hit the nail on the head too. I think a lot of people get enamored with whatever the level above you is. And for high school, maybe it's college, and for college, maybe it's professional, and professional, maybe it's international, whatever it is. Like, but just because you get to that level, I know a few of my friends and mentors have said the same thing. Like, you make less of an impact, it feels like, when you get to that level. You're dealing with like higher level adults, you're dealing with professional athletes that have lots of resources. It's a good place to start when the people are around you. Like, what's the context of what you're working with? Like, who's in my conference, who's down the street that I can actually talk to? And you said it yourself, like, being able to do a lot more with less. I'm more impressed with those things. And if you can do that first, then yeah, great. Go to another level and see if you can do more with more, and then work with a different type of athlete. But I'd rather talk to the people that are within my kind of like bubble first, and then use that resource till it's dead, and then start working a little bit outside of that. And you see it everywhere. Like Twitter is a perfect example. I am a bystander just watching shit unfold on that. But to see people,
and there's a lot of that out there. There's a lot
yeah,
of that out there.
Just to see people like pick stuff apart or take something out of context completely, just like, why don't you just stay within your little bubble first and use that resource? Because there's a lot of people, like you said, you rattled off so many people at VMI that, like, unfortunately, I don't know. And it's a different day and age, but like, you're right. Those were probably some big time coaches that they didn't have the exposure that, like, nowadays you kind of have to self-promote yourself as much as possible. But that doesn't discredit like how good of a coach they are and how much work that they put in and how much impact they made to the people that were closest to them. And that's, I've always been a proponent of, like, I don't want to film a lot of stuff that like my athletes and everything are doing, because it takes away from what I'm able to do. And like, say what you want about other people doing it, I don't really care. But for me, if it's not going well right inside one-to-one, me to athlete, then why do I want to show the world and take away from that? And like the same with resources and talking to other coaches. Like, let me talk to the coaches that are down the street. Let me talk to the ones at my conference. Let me talk to the ones at my own school, and then start working out before I get enamored with, all right, what's this professional team doing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just going back to kind of my earlier years at the middle school and even at Richland, I'm not the coach I am today if I don't go through that. If I don't dive into block zero, if I don't dive into Dan John's easy strength, if I don't dive into, those simplistic forms of training and foundational, kind of programming, whatever you want to call it, like, I'm not the same coach. Like, the biggest thing I took away from Richland was, you talk about going back to doing more with less. Like, I remember cutting medicine balls open, filling them with sand and duct taping them because we didn't have med balls. Like, I went to our basketball coach and said, "Hey, you got any old basketballs?" And he's like, "Yeah." I took a knife and I stabbed one. I was like, "Hey, here we go." I was like, "This is the best thing to do with the basketball." But making that, making my own boards, buying PVC and making my own, bamboo bars, being able to have 5 different plans because I know the plan's going to change. That was the other big thing I took away from Richland was our head coach there. He wanted things to be extremely organized. I'm not a detail-oriented guy, so I'm sure my summer staff can tell you that right now. Like, "Monty, you're doing 8 different things, and it's going to change 8 different times," and it probably will. But that's because in my mind, I've got, okay, if this scenario happens, I want to do this. If it's this scenario, then I want this. And, but if I do this, then let's go to this. And so, like, I've got a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, because I've had to go to G before. I've had to do that, whether it's the number of athletes, whether it's weather, whether it's facilities, whether it's whatever it is, oh, here we come. This is our head basketball coach. Like, I'm about to get him. Hey, come here. Hey, about to be on a podcast. So this guy.
How's it going?
This guy, this coach, that's James Crafton. He's our head basketball coach. He's in here trying to lift. Yeah. He's about to do bench press for the 5th time this week.
There we go.
The 4th time is Thursday. It's Thursday. But fantastic, dude. No, he's really, really cool. Actually, I had to make sure that I got the first lift in our new weight room before he did.
There you go.
But that's the biggest takeaway, I think, from middle school and even, like I said, my earlier years was you got to develop your Swiss Army knife, right? Like you got to develop your tool set, because you might intern at Alabama, you might intern even at North Texas, you might intern at Texas or A&M or whatever, and you've got all the bells and whistles. But what do you do when it's you and it's 80 athletes and you've only got 5 racks? How do you train? So that's a big part of it. That's a huge part of it.
Yeah, and I think at smaller schools or different levels or places that might not have the same resources or the same staffing or same things available. I think you get prepared for those situations a lot more often. And like you said, you have a primary, you have a secondary, you have a tertiary, you have so many backup plans in place because you've dealt with those situations. And a lot of schools, like, it's a lot easier in my opinion, to be more detail oriented. I've seen it at other places like that are more well off because you have the resources to stick to it. It's like, all right, we have this practice block. You're done at noon from class. At 12:15 to 12:45, you get to eat. All right. At 1, you're on the field out, and then you get to go to treatment. It's your own treatment room. At 3, you're in the weight room. The weight room shut down just for this team. Like there's no room to fail in it. And like, you don't need to have a backup plan for anything. The worst thing that could happen is it rains. Okay. We have to bump everything up. We'll just clear everybody out of the weight room. But do that when you have like 15 high school groups like you have, and class gets canceled one day. All right, there's a tornado warning this day, whatever it is. Like,
well, or hey, I'll do you one better. We all want to talk about technology and how great technology is, right? Well, what do you do when the internet goes out and everything you have is electronic based, and you got 4 teams in there? You know what I mean? Like, that's real. And that happens. That's real. What another example was at Richland. We were that summer, actually the summer I took over, we were finally getting a turf practice field. So I didn't have a field to practice on. So we had to go to the soccer field. So I'm drawing lines. I'm drawing, yard lines on a soccer field with another coach to set up our yardages so we could run. I'm drawing, hoops. I'm spray painting hoops on an empty field because I want to run hoop. Like, I'm setting up the grid. Like, if you're familiar with Kyle Keats and Brian Kagan's grid, on an empty field with no lines. Like, who has to do that anymore? Everyone's got turf. Everyone's got that, but that's a skill set I had to have because we didn't have it, So, going back, like I said, I think everybody should coach middle school, and I think everybody should have to do without for a while, because that's really that's where I became a coach. That's where I became a coach. Like I, I love those guys. Those guys who were in my early years of the middle school are now actually, like, one of them's a coach now, and so, like, he survived me, which was really, really good. But like I owe those athletes an apology in those early years, just because I was not a fun guy to be around. Like, I've changed and grown up and matured, which I know is the plan, or the goal anyway. But so much more from when I was back then, but you have to have that. And I think it's important that you have that, because that, like I said, that's where you figure out who you are. That's where you figure out kind of your identity is in those moments when, like you said, you got 2 coaches out, it's just you, and you got 140 pairs of eyes looking at you like, all right, coach, what are we doing today? And so you figure it out. Or, you've got a weight room that holds 40 and you got 50 in there, and everyone's working and no one's getting hurt, and everyone's getting something done, like, that's when you figure it out. And so I think it's important.
No, I agree. I think that's an opportunity to, like, really kind of earn your stripes, and you have no idea what situation you're going to be put into. And like the job, we talked about it a little bit beforehand, like the job market, it has its ebbs and flows where, like, maybe there's no one applying to positions and you're just completely dry, or then you're on the opposite end of the spectrum and the market is flooded. So now positions are offered like $15,000 less, or you have 2 master's degrees and you're trying to fight for an internship position. That, like, there's no way to predict, like, how the profession is going to be, especially if you're kind of open to anything. You want to be in Alaska, you want to be in Florida, the high school, pro, like, you have no idea. So like you said, you have to develop your, like, skill set and be prepared for anything.
Well, and so I tell people too all the time, I kind of backdoored my way into this profession. And I tell up and coming coaches, I said, look, go be a sport coach first. Like, yeah, like I wanted to be a strength coach, but I was 30 years old with a wife and kid. I needed a job. So I couldn't wait for that one golden unicorn job to come open and then hope and pray that I got it, but how many teaching and coaching jobs are there? Well, there's a lot right now that are open, but even back then, there's a lot more than there are college strength coaching jobs, because really at that time, that was kind of the only place that has, full-time strength coaches, right? So like I had to get a job. And so I started teaching, coaching, and that's when, I just kind of kept, I got a crack in that door, kept pushing it, and then now, like I said, but it took me 10 years to get here. It took me 10 years to get a full-time position, and so, that's, I tell people all the time, like don't be afraid to go the non-traditional route, because the path is what makes you, and at the end of the day, you want the end result, and we don't have to have the same path.
No, I completely agree. Like it's kind of a testament to what your path was like. You got to the position you kind of dreamed about being in, even if you weren't sure what it was, like the path got you there. And it's going to be different for everybody. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, what I wanted to talk about a little bit next, because obviously like in your new role, like now you're only strength and conditioning, like that is your title, like performance coach, versus what you were doing like for 10 years in your previous job. Where like in your opinion, like where is like high school strength conditioning? And you can kind of keep it to the region in Texas, or like obviously you've spoken at a lot of places and you're part of a lot of different forums for high school strength conditioning across the country. But where do you kind of see strength conditioning from the high school setting now, and where do you kind of think it's going to go, or what should we be doing to get it into a better position for the future?
Man, that's a great question. And I truly believe that the high school strength and conditioning coach is really going to be the premier job for our profession. Because if you think about how many high schools there are out there, how many hundreds of thousands of athletes need qualified coaching. If you look at other models, they put their best coaches at the lower level. Like I feel like our profession, at least the people that I'm around and that I interact with, they're some of the best coaches out there. And we are pushing the envelope. We are expanding the impact of our position exponentially each year. That's where I see it going. Like it's been said many, many times, like this is not an entry-level job. Like coaching 15 teams by yourself is not an entry-level job. It's not. Somebody right out of college can go coach 2 teams. But how do you coach 15? And oh, by the way, they've got a JV and a varsity, or a freshman JV and varsity. So now that 15 becomes 30 plus real quick. And they go from freshmen who are just brand new to your program to that athlete that might be going to a Division I level, who has that high level skill set. How do you coach that? That's not entry level. And so I truly believe you're going to see, and you're already seeing it. I can't tell you how many emails, how many phone calls, how many people reach out. Hey, you know what they think about the high school? Hey, are there any high school positions? Because it's going to become the premier spot for coaches. If not for anything else, for quality of life. You're going to have stability. You're going to make, everyone says, why aren't you at the college level? Because they can't pay me enough. And if they do, there's no guarantee I'm going to get that for 2 or 3 years. Because as soon as that coach I'm tied to gets fired, I'm gone. But I could stay here, again, as long as I do a good job. I can stay here as long as I want. So that's what's going to drive the profession. That's what's going to drive the growth of the high school strength coach. Is that people are going to want quality of life. People are going to want stability. People are going to want maybe not financial freedom, but at least not to live paycheck to paycheck, and so that's where I see it going. There's already a model in place, and we talked about this kind of before we started rolling, but there's already a model in place. At least where I'm at in Texas, most high schools, not every, but most have an athletic trainer, athletic trainers. They work with every athlete. Well, why don't we have a strength coach? Or why don't we have strength coaches who work with every athlete? We've already got the model in place. And so I think what you're going to see is that continue to grow and to expand and to trickle down into these smaller schools that are going to see the value of proper training and reduction, of the severity of injuries. We can't prevent injuries, but I think we can reduce the severity of injuries. And that's what's going to happen, and I think you're seeing it in Texas. I think you're seeing it in the South in particular, the kind of, that it's important, and we talked about last year, I don't think like there were 3 jobs, within driving distance of my house. This year, I think there were 6 or 7, and I think next year that's going to double. And so it's very similar to what you're seeing at the college level. We talked about that tactical side of it. And there's a lot of college guys and girls going to that tactical side because those jobs are just coming open. You're going to see the same thing in high school. Like you're going to see the same thing in high school. But not only that, like the high school level, we're going to be industry leading. Like it's not going to be, oh, okay, you're a high school coach. Here's your weight room, figure it out. No, like, have you seen some of the weight rooms and some of the facilities that are out there? Go look at Jordan Johnson's monstrosity at Owasso. I mean, go look at Kyle Keese's place at Geyer. Yeah, I give Kyle a shout out. Go look at, some of these other programs that for a lot of those kids that don't go Division I, and even some that do go Division I, that's the best room they're going to be in. You know what I mean? Like most of our kids won't see a Division I weight room. Some of them will, but most of them will not. My room's the best room they're going to see. If they go Division II, Division III, NAIA, whatever, like that's the best room they're going to see. And I'm going to argue it's the best coaching they're going to have too, but that's a different story, but that's where I see high school going. Like we're going to be the premier level of strength conditioning. And so you can write that down and in 10 years, tell me I'm right. But that's where I see it going. Like we are the industry leaders. I told you, I feel like Texas is at the forefront of that. And it's only going to accelerate from here.
No, we got proof. We got proof now. This is recorded. So there's documentation. When it actually happens, we can timestamp exactly when you said it. No,
you heard it here first.
And I agree. I mean, it's kind of crazy that the way that we shape like strength conditioning and how we talk about setting a foundation and building a base and everything, we still glorify, we turn the whole hierarchy on its head, and we glorify like professional, and then obviously collegiate under that, then high school. And we get to the point where we make high school, a lot of like those private high schools and academies, we turn them into like mini colleges and like just try to use them as recruiting tools. And then
IMG.
Camps, yeah,
IMG. I mean, look at IMG.
Camps get turned in that way too, where it's basically just, hey, where are you going? Like, what star recruit are you? And like, you could go so many different avenues. We have so many conversations about it, but if we relate it to exactly like what we see as important for training, it's about setting a good foundation. And if you're going to set a good foundation, why not the 4 years where you're mandated to be in high school and you're already there? And like you said, there's already a model in place for athletic training. So strength conditioning be able to follow suit. And I think you're right. And I'm not sure, I don't have any of the numbers from any other states, but like, that's a perfect example for you to see that 3 jobs open up within a 15-minute drive from you right down the road. And that doubles the next year. Like, they're catching on. Like, Texas has caught on. There's other places around the country too that are trying to do the same thing at a different pace. But like you said, I think people are starting to realize that, like, injuries are going to be down. You get a better quality of life. Not every kid is going to go play, but if you have every kid training, like, what does that say about future employers? Like, you don't have to be a professional. You don't have to be a Division I college athlete, but to have everyone come out of high school, all right, go to a trade school, but you have physical education in your background, you know, your nutrition, you know how to train, you know how to stay physically active. Like, how does that affect the whole ecosystem if every kid in America has to go to high school? And now every kid in America goes through some sort of strength conditioning program. Like, it's such a bigger thing outside of, we're not even talking about athletics. We're just talking about physical education.
Just fitness. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No.
Hey,
And that's the next, that would be the next evolution for us, because right now the model in Texas is that it's athletic driven, like it's not. I was talking to a buddy yesterday in Arizona, and it's not a part of the curriculum per se. It's a part of the athletic experience. Like, hey, you're going to go see our strength coach who's going to work with you number of days determined by the head coach, which again is a different argument that you could argue, but that's how it is for us. Now, the one good thing about other states, particularly, I don't know particularly, but I know like up north a little bit, like, it's a part of their curriculum. Like, you have a strength training class that anybody can take. Like, that's really cool. And I think that would be a nice evolution from our model. Let's move it not only from athletics. Now let's open it up to everybody. So I think that'd be outstanding. That'd be amazing.
I wonder, like, obviously when you talk about recruits, and it depends on the sport and everything too, and obviously, like, sheer size of certain states is going to skew the data a little bit, but from my time, like, working in college, there you get a ton of high quality recruits out of specifically, like, football, basketball, baseball. You get them out of Texas, Florida, and California. And I don't know if you know this, but do you know how many of your, like, in your classes and, like, in your athletic program, what's the percent of, like, the whole student population that actually come to you?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, we have right around, we've got 2,100 kids, and I would say 400 of them are athletes.
Like, that's already like a pretty astounding, like, to see basically a quarter, at least a quarter of them. And, like, that's probably just varsity. And I mean, maybe JV as well, but
no, that's probably everybody.
Okay.
I would say, and I know this is why, but between 400 and 500.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what my kind of point is. That's a lot, but my point is,
for one person to impact, for one person to teach, for one person to be in charge of. I mean, who else does that?
Yeah. Well, on that, to your point, then, like, we talked about a little bit before, but where, like, more specifically for, like, people in your position, where that's a lot of pressure, and you said it's not an entry level job for high school. And if we really want to, like, kind of put high school at the forefront of people, like, accepting jobs and actually getting those positions, like, it's a lot to ask for one person to do all of that and be in charge of 15 teams and everything. What would you say, like, high school, besides, like, the first step, obviously high school, getting a strength conditioning program and someone that's not just pulled off, like, a different sport or also teaching PE classes, someone that's actually just like a college strength coach, professional sports, you're mandated to, that is your job. That is your title. That is your only responsibility. Besides high schools just doing that, what would you say is like the second step that really would solidify high school as like a hot spot? Or is it like more staff? Is it the facilities? Like what is it that kind of would make your position better, and then ultimately like a lot of spots in Texas better?
Well, I think the easiest comparison, and again, I feel like we're way ahead of the game here, is you have to treat it. I think the easiest way to explain it is like you have to treat it like it's its own sport. Does that make sense? So it's just like football, it's just like basketball, it's just like soccer. So meaning you have a head coach, you have assistants, you have budgets, you have the resources in place to do your job at a high level. It's not just, oh, hey, we've got a position, here's your salary, but you get zero resources to better yourself, to better the room, or to improve the overall program. You have what you have. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. And Texas is like another one of those schools too, especially in like Southeast or places that they kind of do it in certain ways, because like you said, when you're at VMI, like they have powerlifting teams too. So that is their own sport too. But I think that's a great way to kind of, like a great analogy to use, like treat it as its own sport, where you have a head, you have facilities, you have a budget, like you have a travel roster, like whatever it is, all those components that go into running a successful sport year round, having a staff, having things that are funded towards it. That I think that's a good idea of like where that should go, because it services more, and it's a service to all the sports too. So it should take pressure off of it. If not, just pull some of the resources from those sports and dump it into the one place that utilizes all the time. And that was one thing that I took away from one of my former mentors, and was a great way that we kind of used to budget and like actually fundraise for things was, hey, we want new trap bars. Okay, we have 20 sports, we have 20 racks. Everybody go to your team and ask them to chip in $300 so we can get a new trap bar. Now everybody just donated to the weight room. Now everybody gets to use that equipment. And you're basically funding into your own department, and you're actually making your school better at the same time.
And that was the model that I tried to convince them to follow at the previous school I was at. Like, look, it's no longer just a football weight room. You know, football's king in Texas. We all know that. And we all know that football drives a lot of the weight rooms that are in Texas. But that's not the case anymore. That's not the case. Everybody uses the weight room, or at least should use the weight room in some capacity. So why should, and that's what I'm trying to tell our head coach, like why should football have to pay for all this? Basketball is using it, baseball is using it, soccer is using it. So yeah, have them chip in, call it a performance fee, call it a strength conditioning fee, call it whatever you want. But let's share that load so that you're not having to come out of all football money to buy me new trap bars or new safety bars or multi-grip or whatever I want that everybody else is going to use anyway. But I think the reason why that doesn't happen is because it goes back to control. Because if I'm buying it, if I'm supplying it, if I'm in charge of it, then it's mine. And I can dictate who comes in and out at any time and who gets priority. If it's everybody's, then the control is out of my hand, right? And so that's what I think ends up happening a lot of times is that it's a control issue. And so it goes through that one door. Does that make sense?
No, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of it like that, because obviously the mindset when you get to college, strength and conditioning, it shifts a little bit more at most places to a necessity. And like, this is a requirement to be a Division I athlete.
Right.
Like, and in high school, it's really kind of predicated on how important that high school coach sees it. And
I mean, it really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really, it's 100% dependent on how that coach views training.
Exactly.
Because if the coach doesn't view it as highly, you might get 1 day a week. You might get none, or you might get 5 days. And so, yeah, unfortunately, it's predicated. It goes back to that sport coach of it's kind of important, it's not important, or it's a little bit, or is it, okay, I've got to check a box. We're going to come in 2 days a week, but you only get 20 minutes. Like I can't tell you. Well, one example, I have a colleague who's at a different high school. He saw his varsity football program, high school program, for 2 25-minute spots a week. 2. And this is like top of the level, Texas high school, program. And you're seeing your football team. I mean, that's almost negligent. If you think about it, because again, part of what we do is to hopefully impact the injury rate of our athletes. And if they're competing against programs who actually are doing the right thing, then you're negligent, because you're putting out kids on a field that have no business stepping on a field with the other teams. So, but that's up to the head. That's up to that head coach. When it shouldn't be. Like, we're supposed to be the experts, right? Like, I'm supposed to be the subject matter expert in this room. So why is a sport coach dictating to me, well, I only want to see you twice a week, or you only get 20 minutes a day for 2 days a week? I'm not telling them, hey, you only get to practice football twice a week. Or, hey, basketball's only going, 3 days a week. Or, hey, I really like soccer, so we're going to practice 5 days a week. You know what I'm, but like, and that's not just a high school problem. That happens at all levels. Like, I got to get that. Like, I'm not naive enough to know that doesn't happen at your level and up, because I know it does. That sport coach is going to dictate, hey, I want to do this program. I want to do this. Why? Why? Because because it's their team. It's their name on it. I mean, I kind of get that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like, where's the trust? Where's the buy-in? Right? Because at least at your level, that person should have had some input on bringing a strength coach in, right? Should. I know I'm tiptoeing in some waters here, whatever. But should. But why is it okay for the sport coach to supersede the strength coach when it comes to matters of training?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
That's a can of worms for sure. And yeah, every level is a little bit different. Everyone, like you said, I mean, you hit it on the head, and people don't like that stuff. And I mean, this is the stuff that you open up on Twitter all the time. And
well, I can say it because I'm at the high school level. I don't see myself going to college. So
oh no,
I'm sure I'm making somebody mad, but that's okay.
Who cares?
But that's the reality of it. Is if you hired me to be the strength coach, if you hired me to be in charge, then let me be in charge.
Right.
Then let me run it.
Yeah, it's the same thing I say, like when I talk to sport coaches, like when I go into a meeting with them, I'm an assistant coach for your team, like, and program, that for your program,
I'm an extension of you, 100%.
But when it comes, like when you flip the script and you come into my office, like, I'm not saying you need to be the assistant coach, but like if I'm the subject matter expert, then why don't I'm willing to listen to anything you say. Obviously, like, coaches are coming from different places. They've had different strength coaches. Maybe you're not their first choice, or you kind of got delegated to them. But if you want to build some trust in it, then why aren't you talking to the expert that's in their field? If I don't know swimming very well and I'm training a swimming team, I'm going to come in and learn everything from you. And I'm going to research and look at other swimming programs, and I'm going to ask you questions about it so that we can come together with a program. But to be delegated and say, hey, this is what this is what I want. And then you can't justify your decision. It's like, we want to train 6 days a week. It's like, why? Like, well, what's
exactly. Well, because that's what we do. That's my program. Right.
It's the old adage, like, this is how we've always done it. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
no
want
doubt.
to hear that shit.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. You know, and like obviously you can tell I'm getting fired up, but that's something that fires me up is it, you know, like I'm not calling balls and strikes on a baseball diamond. You know, you're not coming to me for, hey, it's third and long. What do you want to run? You know? So when it comes to strength development or when it comes to speed development or aerobic fitness, you know, why is that taken out of my control when I'm supposed to be the expert? And it happens all the time.
No,
luckily, and I'm not speaking in circles here. Okay. We have a tremendous staff in our school, and I am fortunate to be able to program how I want to, and to do things the way I do. So I don't want it to come back and, well, man, he's throwing. No. Like, our coaches are outstanding. They have bought in tremendously and are buying in more and more as we continue this thing, because it's tough. I mean, I get it. I'm brand new, been here a year, you know, but no, we have a tremendous staff, and they're doing an outstanding job. So I just know from the people that I talk to that happens more often than not, that they get dictated to by the sport coach what style or what program or what test or things that they want to implement, when at the very least, like you said, there should at least be some collaboration, some discussion as to what that looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because you're right. Like I'm not the I am. I don't know everything. You know, Joe Ken talks about, he says that he reserves the right to be wrong. And I do too. You know, I reserve the right to be wrong. I've earned the right to be wrong. But I've also earned the right to have my opinion, just like that sport coach has earned the right to have their opinion. So let's have a conversation. Maybe I can learn from you. You know what I mean? Well, hey, you know, we did this. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. Okay. So, all right, well, let's do that then. That kind of fits in. And I do think that's one area that I've grown a lot is just like you have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, there are that many ways or more to get the job done. So maybe you don't want an Olympic lift, or maybe you don't want to bench press, or maybe you don't want to overhead press or to deadlift. That's okay, because now I've got 5 other things we can do to accomplish your goal, right? You know, I think that's just as important too. Like, and luckily, going back to our room, I mean, we can do any lift in our room that you can think of. And if you can't, then you probably don't need to do it. And so going back to having a skill set that when that coach does say, hey, I don't like squats. Okay, well, let's trap bar deadlift, or let's go to a unilateral movement, or let's, whatever it is, push a sled, you know, or pull a sled, or you know, whatever it is, like, you got to be able to have a diverse skill set and not just be married to one particular thing. Like, no, we're like, you know, powerlifting is my background. Yes, I love powerlifting. I owe who I am to powerlifting, but it's not the only way I train. Like, are there elements of powerlifting in my programming? Sure it is. But if you tell me you don't like something, then I'm going to go to something else. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to go to something else. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to buy whatever it is to let me to do whatever it is you want to do. You know, so, you know, and this is another conversation, but yes, we all have biases as coaches, but that shouldn't, like, nobody should truthfully, honestly, if they look at your programming, nobody should be able to tell where your bias is, right? You know, because then you're able to serve a lot more programs. You're able to touch a lot more qualities, you know, like if I look at a sheet and it's got dynamic ever squat, if it's got max ever board press, if it's got 6-second eccentrics or 3-second isometrics, well now, he's a West Side guy, or he's a triphasic guy, or if it says intensification, okay, well, he's a block guy. We shouldn't be able to, you should pick up a program and say, okay, well, this is okay, max effort, but look here, we're doing some isos, or look here, we're whatever it is, like, you should be well-rounded. Going back to well-rounded as an experience, you should be well-rounded as a strength coach. Like you should be able to program multiple ways. Yeah, you're going to have your favorites, and yeah, you're going to have your biases, but you better have, different wells to dip into.
No, that's a great point. I mean, like what you said, talking about, obviously I don't want to negate the fact, like what you were saying about talking to coaches, but like the communication and like that collaboration side of it, I think that's super important. And yeah, if you not being married to an exercise, if you have to take out bench press or whatever it is, like if your toolbox is big and you're not married to something, like that's an easy win, especially like in your first year as a coach. It's like, coach hates bench pressing for whatever reason. He tore his pec when he was 7, whatever. Okay. Like you can have a discussion with him, try to get it in. It's not working. Take it out. That's an easy win. The coach has already got some buy-in with you. And then now you built a little bit of trust, and it's one exercise out. And I think you said it best. Like we all do have some biases, because especially like if you train or you have a background, like your background is in powerlifting, it's in geared powerlifting. It would be very probably cumbersome and non-conducive to put all your athletes in briefs.
But I would love it. That would be awesome. I think who was it? Nate Harvey was talking about that. Him and gosh, I can't think of his name. He's in Georgia. Forgive me. John. Anyway, they're talking about using briefs. Yeah, that'd be awesome, but it's not practical.
Right.
Not right now. I do know schools out there, college schools, who will put their athletes in bench shirts, or who will use knee wraps when testing. That's happened before, but that's a whole different commitment from a budgetary standpoint.
Right.
To be able to do that. But, something simple is like a slingshot. Like that would be really cool, because I think you can save a lot of shoulders that way. I think it would be really cool for briefs. I think it'd be really cool, for a lot of things, but it's not practical. And, a lot of times we as strength coaches, we have to teach our sport coaches. We have to educate them just as much as our athletes. And what you were touching on is, there's got to be give and take. There's got to be give and take with the strength coach and the sport coach, and like you said, that's an easy way to earn trust. That's an easy way to get buy-in. And, I think a good way to kind of illustrate that is we as sport coaches should be married to adaptations. We should be married to principles. We shouldn't be married necessarily to exercises or to machines or to pieces of equipment. What's the end goal? Is it upper body strength development? Okay, well now we can go through 8 different layers of what that looks like. Is it vertical rate of force development? Okay, well that may not be a clean. Let's do a vertical jump. Okay, let's do a resisted band jump. Is it horizontal force production? Okay, well let's squat and broad jump. Let's do a horizontal med ball throw or a number of other things. But if all you know how to do is Olympic lift, or if all you know are bands and chains and we're going to box squat, well then yeah, you're going to run into that person that doesn't like that. And then what do? So I think that's a big deal when you're talking about relationships and being able to kind of concede. I've called that smoke and mirrors. Sometimes you got to use those smoke and mirrors. Hey, we're going to do this, not this, but we're getting the same thing. So I agree.
No, definitely. I mean, it's the same as like coaches wanting to see just like them beat to hell after a lift. And it's like, all right, well, I'm damned if I do, if I'm damned if I don't. I need to make sure that I'm actually doing my job appropriately. All right, the last 3 minutes of every lift, it's like, I'm going to beat the hell out of them with a metabolic circuit, and they're going to walk out of here breathing heavy. And then you just get a big thumbs up. It's like, all right, whatever.
Hey, that was a great one today, coach. You got them good.
That's all you got to do. But that comes with experience. But I think like what you're saying, like kind of being a chameleon and just not being married to a certain exercise, but being married to what the outcome is at the end of the day. Like it doesn't matter, just same as like we talked about with people's coaching path, like that's always going to be different. And the training and programming is always going to be different too. But what is the outcome of this situation? What's the outcome of your career or from that training program? That's really what it all boils down to. But I think like with the bias stuff, like at the end of the day, you should be serving your athlete and not serving your own bias or like what your favorites are. So if you can do that, then you're in the right position and you're doing a service to your athletes like you should be.
100%. No, I definitely agree with that. I think a lot of times we do let our biases get in the way because it's what we want to do for that day, or how we want to train. This is the way that I train, so everybody should train this way. And obviously that we know that not to be true, and you have to be able to adapt and to conform, to the culture of the team, to the level of the team, to the training age of the team, and then the personality of the coach to be able to get to where you want to be, which is a bigger, stronger, faster, more resilient athlete. That the great coaches are able to do that and still maintain their level of integrity within what they believe in their system, right? I mean, that's kind of, if you're looking at what does a outstanding strength coach look like, or what does a competent strength coach look like, I think it's the ability to not get away from your integrity and still give the athlete what they need to be successful while creating buy-in from them and the coach. I mean, I think that's kind of like the apex or whatever.
No, I love that. Hey, you kind of touching on that topic, like training age and like, obviously people like to draw upon their experiences and what they're good at. And yeah, a lot of times those are their favorite things because that's what they're doing in their own personal time or I mean, it's the old adage, like a football coach, like teaches them exactly what they did, what they were taught, and maybe put a few spins on it. Without like knowing that you have a very extensive powerlifting background experience and like that has benefited you, I'm sure, a lot in your coaching, without getting too in the weeds of treating your athletes, like the 15 teams that you work with in very different levels of training, some with probably zero training age. How do you kind of approach lifting, athletic performance, and like even physical education with them being at the age they are, like 9th through 12th grade?
Yeah. So I think some big rocks with that are things that I learned when I was with Frank, and that being tier system, and that being training, being a total body experience. And the biggest thing that sold me on that was, if you think about sport, if you think about what they're going to do, it's a total body experience. And so training should be a total body experience. So that's probably the biggest rock to take away, right? Is that our athletes, when they come into our room, you're going to get a total body lift. And then, and so typically what that looks like is Your tier 1 is going to be a max effort lift. Now, does that mean it's a single? No, it doesn't mean it's a single, but your tier 1 for that day is going to be strength based. It's going to be strength based. And then as we go down the tier 2 is going to be dynamic based, dynamic effort based. And then tier 3 is going to be repetition based. And this isn't new. And a lot of people do it this way. And so I'm not taking credit. I'm not saying this is exclusive to me. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who do this. But to me, it makes the most sense. Now, we also try to start each session with a pull. So we're doing some type of posterior shoulder work. And then at times, depending upon where we're at, we might potentiate that strength movement with a dynamic movement on the front end. So we go from a vertical pull or a horizontal pull into a dynamic bench or a dynamic clean pull or a dynamic squat to potentiate that strength movement for that day. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's the biggest thing I think in our program is that we are also, we haven't talked about this, but time is our biggest restrictor. Typically with the majority of my teams, I would say 75%, I get about 25 minutes, 30 minutes tops with them. Unless they're coming in before or after school. And even then, like a before school lift might be 40 minutes tops. We're not going to do an hour session. I don't even know if I can program that much for an hour session, but for the majority of our sports, it's a 25, 30 minute session tops. And so we're going to hit 3 tiers with some movement prep on the front end. Typically groups of 3. So you'll have, kind of your main movement, a supplementary movement, and then that third person is spotting, we call it coaching. You're coaching during that time. And then we go through 3 tiers and then we get you out of there. So those are probably the biggest rocks of our program is that it's going to be 3 tiers, total body, max effort, dynamic effort, rep effort. And then we're going to get you out of there, I've become a poster child for don't burn the steak, and that's the thing, especially with our level of athletes, we can't and we don't control what they do outside of our room. And more often than not, they're going from our room and going to more training. Well, I can't control what they do with their club team. I can't control what they do with their private skills coach. I can't control what they got to do with mom, dad, or uncle at the gym. So more often than not, I'm going to err on the side of less is more. I don't ever want them, very rarely do I want them leaving my room dog tired. I want them feeling better than they did when they came in. And I want them leaving thinking they could have done more. I want them to experience success in our room. I don't want them to come in and miss a bunch of heavy weight or to miss a bunch of reps and leave defeated. I want them to leave knowing, man, that number one, that was really easy. Coach Sparkman, can we turn it up a little bit? But number 2, I want them to feel good about themselves. The weight room can be scary for a lot of our athletes that don't have that experience. And so I want them to come in and get comfortable and to experience success. I also tell them that my goal is when you leave here to be able to walk into any weight room in the country and be proficient in what that coach wants you to do. And I can't tell you how many athletes have come back to me as a coach. Hey, we did this today. We did this for you. Yeah, I mean, that's good. That's what I want. Or, hey, coach, hey, we did this today. And I remember when we did that with you, or like, hey, coach, we did cleans and coach said I had the best form, or whatever it is, or even less than that, to walk into a commercial gym and be like, coach, man, I'm so glad you taught me how to squat. I'm so glad you taught me how to lift correctly because I see all these clowns in here doing things wrong. I'm glad you taught me the right way, right? That to me is so much like that's the goal. Those are the big rocks I want you to leave my program with.
I love that. No,
That's it.
no, I love that. And I know we harped on high school and like kind of the state of the union with it and where you kind of foresee it going, like to kind of give you my perspective on the other side of it. Cause on the college side, like I deal with the athletes that get to the Division I level that come from like high schools. And oftentimes like I kind of have to do the similar approach that I feel high school coaches are doing. And like you said, just hitting the big rocks. I think a lot of people think, and it depends on the level, depends on what team you're working with, a lot of different factors. But for the most part, the majority of my athletes coming in, regardless of sport, regardless I've been at, like I'm still doing similar work to exactly what you're doing. And I get it. Like you can bench one day, squat one day, deadlift one day, and overhead press one day for 20 years and get stronger. And that's going to happen. But if you're starting to elevate the level that you're playing, you're going from high school to college to professional, like most people think the training should elevate a little bit, or you should be at least prepared for it. But I find myself a lot of times teaching kids how to hinge and teaching kids like, and I'm talking kids, I'm talking 18 to 23-year-olds. I'm teaching them how to learn how to roll, how to like crawl correctly. And it's kind of wild to see. And I'm sure you deal with it in the same way. But it's just the state of the union for high school. Like I hope that it gets to the point where high school is the place to be, because that benefits college, that benefits professional.
Yeah, just to illustrate that, when I interned with Frank and we had that, I never forget that week we got the freshmen. And you're thinking, man, these guys are Division I athletes. They're at the pinnacle of athleticism, right? Like they can do it all. And I'm over in a corner with a dowel rod and some weights stacked up, teaching guys how to hinge, how to squat, how to sit back, how to load their posterior chain. And I'm looking around going like, these are the guys playing on Saturdays. You think that because they go up to college that there's this advanced level of training, and you're right, they're not. But my hope is that if you get my athlete, that they become the example, that they become, hey, look at this person, watch them, or hey, you can do this. Now you graduated out of our developmental program. Now let's go into our level 1, or let's go into, you've been level 1. Now let's go into level 2, because they have the requisite. That's my goal. But yeah, you're right. Like I totally agree with you that you're getting athletes that have no clue how to do anything in your room or how to do it properly, because either they were never taught or they were taught by somebody who didn't know what they were doing.
Right. Yeah. I get some of those, like the ones that come in and have an affinity for it or are proficient in movement and things like that. But it's still, I know when they come in, like they need to be indoctrinated. Like for me, like this is the way I want it done. And no offense to whoever taught you before, but like it's building camaraderie, it's building a team atmosphere. It's like we're doing it this way. It's kind of break you down to build you up. If you're proficient in it, you'll learn it quickly. But like the same as you were talking about.
Yeah. That's the point, right? Is that they have the ability to pick up whatever style you have a lot faster than somebody else because they have a base of prior knowledge, right? Like that's
exactly
the idea. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, because you come in my room, you're gonna do it my way. Not what Jimmy the trainer taught you down there, or not even what another coach taught you. Like, this is my way. We're gonna do it my way. And yeah, no, I get that. I agree with that 100%.
That's awesome. No, to your point, like when we're talking about like when you were at North Texas, everything, like, yeah, the kids are coming in, they're D1 at their sport. They're they're not D1 weight room. Most
100%, so for me, I'm the opposite. Like I'm probably D1 in the where, I don't know if I'm even D1, I'm D none in the weight room and elementary on the field. You know what I mean? Like but yeah, you're right. Like we have to remember that This is not their sport. Again, going back to Coach Ken, in his 3 C's, competitive, competent, or corrosive, we want them to be competent in the weight room, right? They don't have to have, like, I'm a powerlifter, right? 3 white lights, below parallel. I don't harp on parallel. I don't want them going butt to grass. Number one, because I have to multiply. We never did that, But number two, if your butt's on your heels, you're probably getting your butt kicked. So I want it to be competent. I want them to understand, hey, I've got to push my hips back, open my knees up, and sit back in a squat. That's what I want them to understand. I want them to understand if I'm bench pressing, I'm going to set my upper back, flare my lats, tuck my elbows, and press up. Those are the things they need to know. Does a clean look like a clean? Frank used to say, if it looks right, it flies right. Flies right. I think that's a Charlie Francis thing, maybe. I'm not sure. Somebody will probably, correct me. But yeah, if it looks right, it flies right. If it looks like it's supposed to, then I'm okay with it, right? But if your squat's a little bit high, it's a little bit high. If your feet get a little wide in a clean, that's okay. Now, I may not post it on Twitter, right? Because then you get the whole Twitter police of, but somebody else once told me, and using the football analogy, but an ugly tackle is still a tackle. Alan Bishop talked about today on Twitter. I saw him post, your reps are your reputation. And so don't misconstrue what I'm saying. Like, I'm not glorifying bad technique. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is your athletes should have a certain level of competency. They're not competitive at that sport. They're competitive at whatever they're playing. And so that's where we need to be. And that's where I think some coaches who are lifters, and I'm not saying power lifter, I'm saying lifter could be Olympic, power, whatever. We want to enforce the standards of our sport onto our athletes, and I don't think that's fair to them.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, rep integrity is important, but we have to know too that obviously, like exactly like we're talking about, high school level, college level, it doesn't matter. These athletes are coming to play a sport. We're training them for athletic performance. So if you start getting nitpicky into whatever your profession is, or whatever your sport of, like, barbell sport of choice is, we have to remember that this is development for them. Like, they are learning to develop, and they will improve their rep integrity if we hold them to a standard. But it doesn't have to be the same standard that's judged. It doesn't have to be 3 white lights. It doesn't have to be like to this certain depth all the time. Like, you're trying to make them better at their sport. There needs to be a standard within your room and everything, but it's a different set of standards, and you have to kind of judge it. And it can't be just based off of what your weightlifting, your powerlifting, your strongman, whatever your background is, and what that sport dictates in, like, the bylaws for it to be done.
Yeah. So perfect example. This was 2 years ago. I had an athlete, tremendous. I mean, he graduated. He's going to Division I. I'm not going to say where because it'll give away who it is. Doesn't matter. That athlete could not squat or hinge to save his life. Could not. But the dude's a 4-star athlete getting his college paid for to go play his sport. And so I had to treat him like very, very basic compared to everybody else. And I think, and I'm saying this because, again, if you're a coach that says, well, by God, we're going to squat, so we're going to back squat, and that's how we're going to do, and you put an athlete like that on a back squat, number one, you're probably going to hurt him. But number two, you're going to make him a worse athlete. You're going to make him a worse athlete. I mean, you have to meet them where they are. You have to meet them where they are. Like that person's athletic with or without the, and I'm using the squat, but the squat, for example. And so like he would come in and I'd put him on a goblet squat. Because that's where he was. And so I think we got to remember that is don't just do things to do them. Don't just try to impose or whatever, because that's what you want to do. Like you got to be able to again, what's the adaptation I'm looking for? It's lower body strength. Okay, well, it doesn't have to be a squat. Those reps are going to look different because it's a different lift. Those reps are going to look different because that kid is different. But can I put him in a position to be competent? Yeah, I can. That's to me that I'll never forget him, because that kid is the freakiest athlete, one of them that I've coached, and he is god awful in the weight room. But that's not his sport. His sport is his sport. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's
so like
we need to remember that as like strength conditioning coaches, athletic performance coaches. And yeah, we get excited about athletes getting PRs and like putting up big numbers and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like you said, if it's making them a worse athlete, then you're doing something wrong. And
or if it's causing them pain or causing dysfunction, right, whatever it is, yeah, you're putting them in a position to fail.
Exactly.
And to not like you or the weight room and to not come back. And the whole point is keeping them in there so that you get some kind of training effect.
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing to like, besides just athletic performance and everything, though I know we're harping on that because at the end of the day, that is one of the main goals, like for both our positions, regardless if you're at high school, if you're at the college level, whatever it is. But what I think is cool about the high school level is you, as a coach, you have to know that not all your athletes are going to go play in college. Some of them are going to have careers that are completely different. Some might not even go D1, D2, D3, NAIA, JUCO, it doesn't matter. But I think the coolest thing that you've done is like create an environment and a culture like around impacting your student athletes. And it's based off learning. It's based off camaraderie. It's based off development and teaching and education. Like obviously from some of your background, being a heavy in the teaching side. And like you've deemed it and you gave it a name like the Freak Factory and everything too. Like how did you kind of go about like creating that environment? Obviously, because you're kind of going into the second year in your new place. But what are some of like your important qualities or your kind of non-negotiables, or maybe some of your process of how you set about creating that culture for all the athletes that come in?
That's also a really great question. The Freak Factory was something that just kind of happened organically. Again, going back to Baylor, going back to that time period, 2013, 2014, 2015, they had some freaks. They had some freaking dudes. And I don't know, man. I just said one day, like, what are we trying to do? Like, I want superheroes. Like, I want freaks. Like I don't want you to be normal. I want you to be different. Like, I want you to do things you've never done. And so that's kind of where that began was there. And then, I just started tagging everything Freak Factory, Freak Factory, Freak Factory. And so when I'm talking to kids, I tell them every time you come in here, you ought to do something you've never done before. Whether it's 0.1 inches higher on a vert, whether it's 0.01 tenths faster on the fly, whether it's one more rep, 5 more pounds, that's why I love this job. That's why I love lifting. That's why I feel like I was drawn. We ain't talked about conjugate that much, but that's why I feel like I was drawn to that, was because I knew, and it's to a fault, right? It's to a fault. I knew, did I get better or not? I knew when I left the room that I get better. And yesterday I trained dynamic ever bench. I didn't do any crazy reps. I didn't do it. I just, honestly, I went through the motions, but I just did the training and I left. And I was really like, man, I just went, like, in my mind, I wasted a session because I didn't do anything extraneous, you know? But I want to set our athletes up when they come in that they do something that they've never done before. And so that's where that freak, quote unquote, comes out, is because now it's like, oh man, I just ran 0.1 faster, you know. I've got a female athlete right now. She's going to be the first female that I've coached to jump 30 inches. Like, I've never seen that. That's freaky to me. Like, that's the freak and freak factor, you know. At Richland, kid had a video, went viral, clean 360 as a junior. That's freaky, you know. Running a 0.94 fly 10. That's freaky. Jumping 40 inches. That's freaky. And so, like, I want to empower kids. Like, I don't want them to come in thinking they're average. Like, no, you're special. Why are you special? Because you train in the freak factory. And so the second part of that, the factory part, is what do factories do? They do things repetitively, right? And so I don't just want one freak. I want a whole army. And so that's where that came from, is that I want to build freaky human beings. I don't want to build normal human beings. And again, you know, that's what drew me to geared powerlifting. It's like, it's not normal to put 900 pounds on your back. Last night I handed out the 725 bench. That's not normal. You know, so that's why I stay in it, because at 42 years old, how many 42-year-olds are putting 600 pounds over their face and benching it? How many of are putting 700 pounds on their back and squatting it? I don't know. Probably not very many. And so for me, like, that's what allows me to separate myself from everybody else, because I don't want to be normal. I don't want to be the same. And so for our athletes, it's the same thing. Like, I don't want them to come in and just, okay, we're doing 3 sets of bench. Or, okay, I cleaned 135. You know, like, I don't want that. And so when you talk about culture, when you talk about how do you create that? Well, I think part of it is modeling it, right? You know, they see me train, they see me hit PRs, they see me do things that they don't know anybody else can do. And it doesn't have to be crazy. Like, it can be, you know, something, you know, I say average, a 405 bench. Man, oh yeah. Well, it could be a bad day for me, but they're going, oh my gosh, you just did 405, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, that's not normal. And so modeling, I think, helps. You know, again, a lot of who I am is because of the background and the little strength that I have. And so that's part of it. But then just encouraging them, you know, I love Tony Holler, feed the cats. You know, it's funny that people think that, I don't know, that we're different or whatever, but we're really not. You know, they're trying to break PRs and we're trying to break PRs. And so you post them and you rank them, and it becomes a record board, right? But it's a different kind of record board. And so now kids want to be up there because you're promoting them, you know, you're rewarding them for what they do. You know, really, it's not a whole lot different than shaping behavior, right? They do the behavior, you celebrate it, you reward it, they want to come back and do it again. But when they come back and do it again, you want them to do it better. Okay, now be better. And so that's the culture that I want to create, is Not a culture of, man, I got to come to the weight room today. Man, we got squat, we've got athletes right now who don't understand the value of squatting. The athletes right now don't understand the value of consistency. That's on me. That's on me to figure out how to get them here, because they're not making that connection. That's the culture piece. I want to come train because, number one, I'm going to leave 9 times out of 10 feeling better than when I came in. I'm going to leave feeling more confident. And I'm going to leave feeling successful because I did something today that I couldn't do yesterday. That's what I want.
I think that's awesome. And I think like you coining a term for it is something that like the athletes can really latch on to. And I mean, that's the same as logos. It's the same as branding. It's something that like people identify with. And I think that's as small a thing that it is, like, obviously, like you can define it pretty well, but like from anybody on the outside that doesn't know the story behind it, just thinks it's kind of empty words maybe. But you explaining to a freshman coming in, like why this is coined this way and what we actually accomplish here, what we do. I think all those traits that like you're trying to consciously like ingrain in them are things that they're going to carry on forever, like from your programming and like how it's short, but they're not getting beat up at the very end. So because of obviously like there's a formula to it, but like they know that it's important because of how you kind of carry it out, and that culture kind of breeds and it develops and it starts to actually like seep into the next crop of kids and the rest of the athletes. And then it really does like take on a life of its own because of like you leading the way, them like modeling it, but them kind of really taking hold of it and taking ownership of it and enjoying it and being empowered and having confidence and like working together. I think that's awesome.
Well, and the crazy thing is, Nick, and this is what I tell them. And again, I've only been here a short time, but just show up. Just show up and go through the training. And I promise you, crazy things will happen. Because I've seen it. I've seen it for 6 years. I've seen like, we don't do anything that's flashy. We really don't. It might look flashy, but we really don't. We're going to pick up things heavy. We're going to pick up things fast. We're going to sprint. We're going to jump. We're going to measure it all. And then you're going to go play. And in that process of lifting heavy and lifting fast and being better movers and maximal sprinting and maximal intent jumping, crazy things happen. When I left the previous school, we had, it was 30 over 30 jumping 30 inches. Like to get on that record board, top 10, you had to jump 35 or better, maybe even 36. And I know people want to argue jump mat, whatever. I don't care. Like those kids are jumping and they're jumping high. Again, going back to Tony, feed the cats, fly 10s. To get on that fly 10 board, you had to run like a 9.6, which is pretty fast, to get on the board. And so the cool thing about that is it goes back to expectations, right? Like, I expect you to be a freak. I expect you to become and do things that you've never done before. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to rise up and do that. But the second part of that is there is a process to it. My AD gets sick of me saying it's a process. But it's a process. And it's not going to happen in 1 year. And it may not happen in year 2. But it's kind of like the story of bamboo, right? The farmer goes out, plants some bamboo, he waters it first year, nothing. Keeps watering it, second year, nothing. Keeps watering it, third year, nothing. The fourth year, it shoots up 20 feet. It's a process, and you got to trust that what we're doing is eventually going to get you there. I can give you story after story of junior level JV athlete that their senior year they become all district, which is like our all region or whatever you want to call it, like all conference, I guess. Like I can give you story after story of people who were very, very average their junior year, but their senior year, they exploded. Why? Because they kept coming back and kept coming back and kept coming back. And finally, they busted through that plateau and became something special, and like that's the idea. That's the idea. But you got to trust that if I do A, B, C, D, I'm going to get to E. But if you try to skip and go A to D, then all you're going to do is self-destruct. And so that's where I'm at right now, is getting them to understand that, getting the coaches to understand that, getting the parents to understand that, hey, just show up. Just get here. Get here and go through the process, because the process works.
I love it.
So, all right, I'm getting off my soapbox.
No, that's the first step to anything. Like if you want to do it today, and yeah, build some consistency with it. And hearing more and more about like how you kind of indoctrinate like your expectations and educate the athletes about how the process is important. Like, yeah, it's gonna take a time like for them to actually get it, but once they do, I think you have them bought in more and more, and that's awesome.
And so just to elaborate, I didn't mean to cut you off, but just elaborate a little bit more on that. Is it's even harder now because now I got to do that 15 times over. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's not just 3, 4, 5, or 6 teams. Now I've got to do it 15 times over. So think about that. I mean, that's a process.
Oh, yeah.
Because they might be at 15 different spots. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's you've definitely got a lot on your plate, and I think that there's certain times of the year that are probably pretty good for you too, when other teams get to see different sports like training too, because they kind of see where maybe another team is a step ahead of them, or another team is maybe a step behind them in that process.
Oh, 100%.
They're
Yeah,
either pulling them up, or they're trying to reach that goal too.
Yeah, because that goes back to level of buy-in, right? Like if you're not bought in, then I don't get to take those next steps. You're going to stay at A where they might be a D. Well, why aren't we doing that, coach? Well, because I only see you X, Y, Z, or because you don't put in the effort or the energy to get you to where they are. Because it all goes back to training age. It goes back to, I want you to be successful. Well, if you can't front squat, then that's not successful. I'm not going to put you onto a bar just to check a box. Okay, we front squatted today. You're going to goblet squat. You're going to split squat. You might body weight, counterbalance body weight squat. Until you demonstrate the skill set to be able to progress. They drive that progression. I don't drive the progression. The kids drive the progression. You tell me when you're ready to go by the level of mastery you can demonstrate on a particular movement. I don't drive that. Like it's not, okay, week 4, we're done. Okay, boom, we're going on. If you're not ready, you're not ready. I can't, again, multiple years like dealing with freshmen where you go through a winter, quote unquote, right? And you drill and drill and drill. And okay, like coming up, it's March. Let's progress. Let's go on to the next thing. And then 3 weeks later, man, this sucks. And then we go right back, and you say, coach, why do you go back? Well, because they don't get it. And I'm not going to do it just to do it. Like we're going to stay with the level that they can demonstrate where they have success. And then we're going to build on that, but we're not going to do things just to do things. I'm not going to check a box just because school Smith is doing it or because Coach Joe is doing it. We're going to do things because I know that's what you need. Going back to cooking, like if you turn the heat up too fast, you're going to burn the steak. You got to slow cook it. You got to put the seasonings on. You got to put the trimmings on. I like macaroni and cheese. I like a baked potato. You can't just eat the steak first, or you can't do it too quick. So I don't know. I'd go everything back to food too. That's the other thing. It makes sense to me.
No, that made me think about Coach Wintrich's like groups too. Like when you were in North Texas, like when he started putting them in different levels of proficiency, and like you have to be able to master this, like be proficient in these movements to be able to actually move on to the next one. And then he had the freaks of the freaks at the top. Those are the guys that are ready for it, and they've shown that they're ready for it, and they've earned the right for the program to develop in this way.
Yeah, and what I think we have to understand, what the athletes have to understand, is it doesn't make them any less of an athlete, right? Like it doesn't dictate what they do on a court or the field or whatever. It's just where they are in the weight room. Like that kid I told you about, the goblet squatting. It didn't make him any less slow. It didn't make him not able to dunk a basketball or go catch a go route. It just meant that's where he was in our program. And maybe we as coaches can do a better job of explaining that. Like you're at this level because that's where you are. It doesn't mean that you're any less. It doesn't mean you're not going to start. It just means that that's where you are. Now, what we can do is say, now, look, what happens if you can get here? And then maybe that does boost you up, or maybe it doesn't, but yeah, that level system, I got used to it at North Texas, because we had green and we had white, and I want to say we had even a Delta group, but then like the guys at Baylor, they had developmental, they had green, they had the same colors, white, they had black, but I think it's even more important at our level to have that stratification, just because of the different times that athletes mature, because you might have that freshman that's got a beard like me, or you might have that freshman that, ain't even thinking about shaving, and so physically they mature differently, but also you just might, gosh, I gave a presentation and I had 6 different 8th graders lined up on a wall, and one was here, one was here, one was here, one was here. And so they're going to be different. Like they're just going to be different. And so you got to meet them where they are. But I think every program, and that was a cool thing at the other school, was that you could walk in on a squat day and you would see goblet squat, you would see front squat, you would see back squat, and maybe even a box squat. So you would see 4 different squats on the same day, because that's where they were. When you're one person running a room, that's kind of tough. Luckily we do have assistant coaches and we have head coaches that are with us in that room. And so they can act as additional sets of eyes and things like that. It takes a certain amount of oversight to get that done. But I think if you can do that, then you're really going to enhance your buy-in. You're really going to expedite your outcomes, because again, you're cooking that steak at the right temperature. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And I won't even try to add anything onto that. That was perfect. Hey, so I want to be mindful of your time and everything. So I want to end the show like any good training session. We've got a finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions.
Oh boy.
And overtime. So you can go fast, or you could take your time and elaborate on any of them, but you ready?
Okay. Yeah, here we go.
All right. First one, biggest influence in strength and conditioning and biggest influence in powerlifting.
Louis.
All right. What can you be?
What else you got to say? I mean, Lou, hands down, Lou.
All right, here we go. Next one, we'll roll. What can you be found doing when you're not coaching or competing? What are some of your hobbies outside the weight room?
Oh gosh, I really don't have any. I mean, I like to play golf. I haven't played in probably 2 years. I like to fish. I haven't fished this year. I mean, I've got 2 girls, so family stuff. Now it's swimming. We swim, and then here lately I've been a chauffeur. I've taken them here and there across town to do this and that. But that's probably an area that I can be better in, because like I enjoy training. Like I look forward to the session. We've got a group of coaches that train super early in the morning. And number one, I think they're crazy for doing that. But number two, that's the best part of my day. Like I look forward to training. So I don't want to get rid of my day or the best part, like in the morning, right? Like I want to look forward to that, like at the end of the day. And so I typically train in the afternoons, but I enjoy training, and I've created a pretty nice little room, I think, at my house. And so 3 or 4 hours, it's good and bad, right? Because I mean, I can walk right outside, but then there's no urgency. I was listening to somebody talking about, training, and even Lou says this, training should be 65, 70 minutes, hour and a half tops, right? Well, that's good. And maybe the actual time of training we do is that much, but there's, 2 hours on the front end of talking trash, an hour on the back end of talking trash, but I love to train. Like, I also love going to meet people. This is, a little bit different tangent, but I think what helped me early on was I wasn't scared of reaching out to people. I wasn't scared of, oh, what are they going to think? I wasn't scared of, hey, going to talk to somebody. I wasn't scared of, hey, calling somebody up or sending an email, I wasn't scared of putting myself out there. Like I said, I went to that Baylor clinic in 2010, and 3 years later, I spoke at it. I was a middle school coach. And I'm speaking in front of, I don't know how many coaches were there, how many college coaches were there, but, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I'm speaking at a conference in, I don't know, a month, and Joe Kinn's going to be there. He's speaking too. Holy cow. I mean, the dude is, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Like, make it happen. Make it happen. Make connections. Go to places. Go see people. Call them. 9 times out of 10, that coach will pour their heart out for you and give as much information respectfully as they can, given their time, than not. And if that one coach doesn't do it, then you probably don't want to learn from them anyway. But Dave Tate talks about all the time about live, learn, pass on. That's where I'm at, is so many people poured into me that if you DM me or you ask me to come on a podcast or you ask me for time, I'm going to give you my time. Why? Because people gave me time. And so I know that's not really what can I be found doing, but honestly, it's talking to coaches. It's giving back what was given to me. So anyways, all right, next question.
That's perfect. Hey, if you weren't, I know you've done a lot of jobs, but
if I wasn't a strength coach,
if you weren't a strength coach, what do you think your job would be?
Dude, this is crazy. Okay. Like if people listen to this, they're going to go, what? I think 2 things. I think number one, something to do, and this is going to blow people's minds, something to do with the church, like some kind of ministry, some kind of role in that regard. And not because I'm super, I sin a lot daily, I'm not perfect by any means, and I'm not claiming to be, but I do think if I wasn't a teacher or a coach, I would be involved in some of that, some way, shape, or form. I also think this is another crazy thing. I love music. I love music, all kinds of music. I think I would do something maybe with music. And again, I never really I sang in church choir, and I was in a band in sixth grade, but other than that, I have no other musical attachment, but I love listening to music. And so I think if I wasn't doing this, it would be one of those two things, because, and my wife will tell you, I can't build things. I can't fix things. I'm not good with money. Can't really color that well. So that X's out a lot of opportunities. But I do enjoy working with people. And so, that's why, something like that.
Okay. Hey, so if you're setting up an ideal training day for yourself, what is that go-to music for you? And what is your best post-training meal?
Oh man, the go-to music is tricky because it depends on my mood. It depends on what I've been listening to before that. Because I'll tell you, it might be some 2000s pop, one of the coaches this morning was jamming out to American Wi-Fi or Hi-Fi or whatever it is, like Bowling for Soup, Blink 182. Love that stuff. Kesha, the girls were jamming to Kesha today. I'll listen to Kesha. I'll listen to I'm not the guy that's going to go in and play Metallica every day. I'm not the guy that's going to go in and play gangster rap every day. I'm not the guy. Now, I don't listen to country in that setting at all, but maybe it's Creed. A lot of people make fun of Creed, and I think Dan McKim does Creed Fridays or something, but maybe it's Creed, but yeah, man, it really depends. It could be anything, and that's a cop out, but it just depends, but right now, if I'm going to hit something big, I'm trying to think. I don't know, probably something like Blink or something from that era.
What's that post-training meal look like though?
Post-training. Oh gosh,
big PR.
That's even tougher. Just had my birthday. I love hibachi. And so we went to hibachi. I love, and people who know me that I love fried rice. And then obviously, big old ribeye. You can't go wrong there, but if I hit a big PR, I'm probably at my house. So I'm probably cooking a ribeye and, doing that with some roasted corn or some shrimps, something like that, some broccoli with that, got to have a little bit of greens in there, something like that. But yeah, probably some kind of dead animal steak, it's probably going to be the go-to for post training.
All right. Last one I got for you for overtime. Obviously you've been in the game for a bit, both powerlifting and coaching. What would be your number one piece of advice to people to make the strength game culture last long term?
Don't burn the steak.
I like it. Hey, that's perfect. There's your meal right there, and there's the advice too. That's perfect. Hey, so Coach, like I said, I appreciate you a ton for coming on today. We could go on for a long time, but want to be mindful of your time and respect of where can people kind of follow up with you if they have any questions or want to reach out?
Yeah, probably the easiest way is going to be through Twitter, and that's at Monte Sparkman. If you want my email, it's msparkman@azleisd.net. But if you want to get in touch with me, reach out to Twitter, and then I'll be happy to give you my phone number or whatever. And talk as much or as long as you need to, or as depth as you need to. I think, what are we going on? 2.5 hours?
Something like that.
Oh my gosh, 2.5. It's flown. Like, I'm like, okay, well, when are we going to talk about like this? We're talk about that, like it's flown by. It really has. And I told you I was a talker, but I love sharing what's been given to me, because, I said, don't burn the stake. And I mean that, because it took me 10 years to become a strength coach. Like, and really you could say it's even longer than that, but this isn't a overnight success, for us. It takes years. It takes years. Like, if you think about, it's called long-term athletic development. It's not called short-term athletic success, and so you got to be in the game for a while to experience success. I think too many people nowadays want to put 2 videos up and call themselves an expert, or they want to have one athlete who is a genetic freak without them, who just happens to buy into their nonsense, and all of a sudden they're an expert. I mean, that's not what this is about. It's about longevity. Can you be in it 10 years from now? I started lifting really in high school, 1994. I was a freshman. And so I'm 2 years away from 30 years of lifting. Like, some of these people ain't being alive 30 years, and they're calling themselves experts and calling themselves gurus and whatever else. And I'm not special. I'm not saying this because Monte Sparkman is an outstanding lifter. I'm not. I'm maybe a little bit above average at best, because there are so many people out there have done a lot more than I have. So I'm not saying it from that way. I'm just saying that you got to put some skin in the game. Again, you got to keep that steak on the grill over a long period of time to really bring out the flavors and the juices and to tenderize it and to really make it special. And people don't want to do that because we've become a society of such instantaneous gratification. Like, we want it now, we want it now, we want it now. That's not the way this works. It's not the way it works in sport. It's not the way it works in your job. It's not the way it works in your life. Like, it takes time. And I have to remember that, being a first year guy at a new school, right? Coming up on, I'm still first year. It takes time. It takes time. And you can't rush it. So I don't know where I was going with that, but
don't microwave the steak.
Yeah, just get some skin in the game. If you're doing good things, and this is what I always hung my hat on, or tried to anyway, is if you're doing good things, people will find you, right? If what you're doing has value, people will reach out. So if people are reaching out to you, then you're probably doing some good stuff. If they're not, keep putting yourself out there, keep working, and eventually, if it's worthwhile, then somebody will notice. So.
No, it's great advice. And
I don't know.
No, I mean, from, like you said, from pretty much 30 years of lifting, like competing, training, coaching, everything in the game, like, it's awesome to get you on today and kind of pass along some of that info that you've learned. And I mean, just like you said, Dave Tate says, like, live, learn, pass on. So I appreciate you coming on and passing on some of that information and sharing some of your backstory and like your lessons and everything, because it's a never ending process. So to see you still kind of go through it and see how you're making those tweaks and everything, and hear more about it and pick your brain, we could have gone any way with this conversation. So I appreciate you taking the time today, Coach.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Of course.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.